Welcome everyone, today we'll have a new build guide for Diablo 4 and also Rogue for the server slam. So in this video, we'll look into 3 different builds for the Rogue, including the melee Rogue, and also the range Rogue, and also the hybrid Rogue. We'll be looking into the latest patch notes of the Rogue changes and also testing those before the launch of the game. So coming over to our first build for the Rogue. Now this build will be testing out the increased cooldowns of the imbuement spell. So if we come over here to the Rogue patch notes, we can see the Cyberfetch skills are being buffed for the bonuses, and so are the passives. But we don't have enough points for the passives at the moment for the server slam. And finally, the imbuement skills have had the cooldowns increased, so we want to test this out. And the first popular Rogue build will be about Twisting Blade. So coming over to the skill tree for the Rogue, and what you can see is I decided to go with Blade Shift just with a bit of bonus movement. Now if you find yourself short on energy, you can go with Invigorating Strike, or you can go with Puncher. Those also works. Now we'll be going with 5 points into Twisting Blade, and over here we'll go with the Twisting Blade upgrades, which allow us to have a lower cooldown as we shoot more Twisting Blades. Now right away, I do want to highlight, in order to make this build work, we really want the key aspects for the blade dance aspects, which allows the Twisting Blade to be spinning around us. This is a very random and RNG aspect because this does not drop in the first storm. So if you're playing the server slam and if you get these particular aspects, it will be really good. But if you do not get these aspects, it is hard to make this build perfectly, because if you don't have the spinning blade, this won't work as well, and this is the downside. Now of course, you can come over to the second build, we'll still play a mini rogue, but this time we'll use Flurry, which is readily available in the first storm. So coming back to our skill tree. Because we have limited skill points for the server slam, only 22 points, we'll go with 1 point into dash and also its upgrades, which allows dash to increase critical strike damage and also allows us to slow enemies. Now it is optional to pick the slow part, but I want to deal more damage because enemies are slowed. Over here we'll be going with Poison Trap and also Dark Shroud. Dark Shroud is pretty straightforward. The upgrades allows us to have a higher critical chance, which works well with the increased critical damage. Now why am I going with Poison Trap is that I want to have the ability to reset imbuement skills, and these have a 30% chance of doing so. The Poison Trap itself have a 10-second cooldown, and if we do get lower cooldowns with the Twisting Blade, the Poison Trap will have a lower cooldown. And this also comes back over here to the Shadow Imbuement. We'll go with 1 point into Shadow Imbuement and also its upgrade, which allows us to make enemies more vulnerable. So what is ideally going to happen is, once we have the key Twisting Blade aspects, we'll be able to reduce cooldowns of the Poison Trap. And in return, Poison Trap have a chance of reducing cooldowns of the Shadow Imbuement. And Shadow Imbuement will also have reduced cooldown because of Twisting Blade, which allows us to have very minimal cooldown. Now if we come back to our notes, we can see that the Rogue specialization for this build will be Inner Sight, which provides us with infinite energy for a few seconds. This also works very well with the Edge Master, because these Edge Master aspects also provide us with higher damage with the higher resource we have. So if we do come over here, you can see I have highlighted a few of the aspects that can be nice. And for the Edge Master, this is a really good one for the bursty of the Inner Sight specialization. Now one of the aspects I also want to highlight is going to be the Toxic Alchemist aspect, which allows us to deal damage to poison foes with Shadow Imbuement, which have a 75% chance of triggering Poison Explosion. So what that means is, you want to have Shadow Imbuement, you also want to poison enemies, and once you have both, and also these particular legendary aspects, you'll be doing additional damage in terms of the Poison Explosion. So this is one of the reasons I decided to go with the Shadow Traps, the Poison Traps, and also the Shadow Imbuement, which makes the build a little interesting and also more versatile with damage. Now of course over here I also linked additional perks and also aspects you can go with this build, and over here you can see a few of the other ones if you get those, but those are not that important, and we know the drop rate of legendaries will be much lower, so I don't want to give you guys too many legendaries to hunt for, and we just go with the bare minimum. Now coming over to a second build for the Rogue. This time we'll go with a Flurry Rogue with a higher bursty damage. So in case you guys do not get your Blade Dance aspects from the legendaries, you can still go with a melee Fury Rogue. Because for Flurry, it is available in the first zone. You can craft this one as the legendary codex, and this is really good. Just do the dungeons and you have this one. Now briefly going over to the skill trees and also choices for this build. So the first thing you can see is I'll be going with Puncher, and I like Puncher because Puncher provides slow and also provides vulnerability. Puncher can also be a bit of range attack. Now we'll be going into 5 points into Flurry and also its upgrades. We'll also be making enemies vulnerable with Flurry. Once we come over to the agility section, we'll be going with Shadow Steps and also the upgrades, which allows us to stun enemies. If you have seen a previous video about this particular build that we're testing in level 25, I use Shadow Steps in order to engage the elite monsters and also bosses, which allows me to do additional damage with the legendary codex over here, which allows us to do 20 to 40% more damage to stun enemies. Now because we'll be a melee rogue, Dash is a really good ability, which increases our critical chance, critical strike damage, and also provide us with a lot of mobility. And over here we're also going with a Dark Shot, which also provides us with higher critical chance, and also a bit of the damage reduction as well. So the next part, we'll go with Shadow Imbuement. This imbuement is by far the most popular imbuement for the rogue, and this works wonderfully well with Flurry. And over here, we'll go with its upgrades to provide us with more vulnerability. So ideally for this build, what you want to do is, you want to dive into the enemies with both Shadow Step and also Dash, and then you want to imbue your spells with Shadow Imbuement, and then you want to be hitting them with Flurry, which deals tremendous damage, especially with the imbuement. If we come over to the notes, you can see our specialization for this melee rogue will be combo points. So for the order of the skills, you also want to melee attack a few times with your normal attack, and this will provide us with more combo points. And when we hit enemies with Puncher, we'll be slowing them down and also making them more vulnerable. Together, combined with Flurry, we'll be doing a lot of damage. Now because we have talked about the two aspects over here, we'll focus on the smithing aspects for this particular build. So because we'll be controlling enemies quite a bit with Shadow Steps that stuns enemies, we also have Puncher that slows enemies and make them vulnerable. One of the aspects I think will be quite interesting will be the smithing aspects, which allows us to have a higher critical chance and also gain increased crowd control duration. So this is actually quite interesting because we want both of that. So I decided to list this one over here in case you guys find these aspects with your legendaries. Now coming over to a third build for the rogue for the Server Slam, in case you guys want to try a range build or maybe a trap build. So I decided to make a hybrid build for you guys for level 20, and this also works wonderfully. So one of the things we wanted to be testing is how much of the Sabotage skills are buffed, and one of the ways to test this out is with a Poison Trap. So coming over to skills over here, we'll be going with 1 point into Heartseeker and also its upgrade, which provides us with a bit of more attack speed. Now we'll be going with 5 points into Barrage, and also Barrage will make enemies more vulnerable. So this is good because we'll be dealing damage with Barrage and also other sources. Now as we keep going, you can see I'll be perking into some of the traps like Catch-ups and also Dash for mobility. And on the next part, we'll be going with 5 points into Poison Trap, and we really want to see how much of the buff to Sabotage it is for the Poison Trap. And for the Poison Trap, I decided to go with Poison Trap will reset imbuement spells, which is actually quite interesting. Now for our last 3 points, we'll be going with Poison Imbuement, and also Poison Imbuement have a 30% chance of doubling amount of the poison applied to enemies. So notice that if you set a Poison Trap, you have a chance of resetting your imbuement spells. And if you use imbuement, you have a chance of doubling the poison onto enemies, and this works wonderfully well. So ideally, we're gonna be a range rogue that deals a lot of range AoE damage. We also have a damage over time, and lots of more damage in the form of traps and also from aspects. Now for this particular build, we'll be going with a rogue specialization in the site to provide us with more abilities to cast Barrage quickly and also to cast a lot of Barrage. As for the key aspects, we'll be going with the aspects of Branching Volley, which allows Barrage to have a chance of splitting into 2 more arrows, which provides us with more damage. Now there are some other good offensive aspects over here, and because we'll be testing out the poison traps, so one of the things we can go with is going to be the aspects of Bursting Venom. So if I come back over here, I'll show you guys the aspects over here. So the aspect of Bursting Venom provides us with a chance of resetting our spells with imbuement spells. So when you critical hit with a poison imbuement spell, 10% chance of creating a pool of poison, which deals damage and also resets your poison imbuement with no cooldown and also no charge limit. So this could be quite interesting. I do think this works wonderfully because we'll be poisoning enemies a lot. So I'm really interested if I get this aspect. Now the Blast Trapper aspect is also quite interesting, because dealing direct damages to enemies that stands in the trap will also provide us with more vulnerability, which provides us with more damage with all sources. Now one of the highlights for the utility aspects, if you guys do get this one, and I think you can because you can craft this one from the Fracture Peaks, is that your grenade skills will become traps, and your traps, when you arm your traps, you drop grenades, and this also provides you with bonus movement. So it is possible, guys, to go with grenade spells like the smoke grenade, and then you replace one of your utility spells. So it is really up to you if you're going for catch-ups, or you can go with a smoke grenade, which also works wonderfully. So here we have it, guys, 3 different builds to try for the rogue, and the focus again is we want to try the sabotage with the poison traps. We also really want to see the changes of the imbuement spells, which will be a very big factor for the rogue. Now unfortunately, guys, we can't really test out the passives simply because we don't have enough skill points. We want to have at least 6 active spells. So let me know what you guys think about those builds. Which of the rogue build would you be trying? Are you going to go for melee rogue, range rogue, poison rogue, or maybe are you going to go rogue at all? Because you only have 2 days, right? And it's very hard to find legendaries. So some of those builds could be very tricky, especially for Twisting Blade. Now, if you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, no-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates, and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4.